Within the black community, I really believe that if we can address issues around the K-12 system, it will have exponential benefits to blacks. And so people ask me, you know, you're the CFO of the University of Phoenix, why do you have interest in it? I tell them because I'm black. We must stand together around addressing some of the issues in our K-12 system, whether it be recruitment or retention of teacher, pay, understanding what content is being delivered to our children in the classroom. Parents should not be afraid to address those issues.
Schools are increasingly looking and feeling and operating like prisons. You walk into school in New York, PS anything. You go to North Philly, you go to Harlem, you go to Watt, you go wherever you want to go. It's a line down the street to get into school. It's 20 minutes to get into school because you got to go through a metal detector. You got surveillance camera. We spent more money on surveillance equipment in schools than prisons over the last 10 years. So you got surveillance cameras, you got dogs sniffing through your legs, you got police officers, school officers, parole officers, probation officers. You have an entire infrastructure of criminalization in the school. All the infrastructure and all the money is on the front end of containment. So we've already created a kind of logic and framework of criminalization in general. Then when you get to suspensions, expulsions, et cetera, you have a problem of structure again, because I don't even want to get to the racist teacher yet, because that's often the easiest place to get to, just like it's easy to get to the racist police officer and not the broken system, right? So in schools, we've widened the net of criminality. We've widened the net of discipline, and we've deepened the net. Widening the net means that you get in trouble for more stuff, right? So when I was in school, I used to fight. I get in trouble for fighting. Most people didn't disagree that we get in trouble for fighting, but now you bring the wrong thing in, the wrong object. You bring in a Swiss Army knife by accident, or you do little things that are now considered big things, and you get in trouble for more stuff. So the net is wider, it catches more people. But the net is also deeper, the penalties are greater. When I got in trouble in school, we got sent to the office. In Philly, we got pink slips. The principal handled school discipline. Now law enforcement handles school discipline. So we've outsourced school discipline to law enforcement. So the net is deeper. So kids who write Joni Loves Alex, like in Texas, violate the gang graffiti code, get kicked out of school. A little girl in North Philly 7 years ago has a temper tantrum and gets carried out in handcuffs for disorderly conduct. So we've taken developmentally appropriate behavior and criminalized it. You don't want your kid to have a temper tantrum, but they always have. We just didn't put them in jail for it. 80% of school disciplinary action is not a concrete violation of school policy. What that means is, if I smoke a joint in the middle of class, I probably should get suspended. If I punch my teacher in the face, we could all probably agree, on real much, we could probably agree you should get suspended. But 80% of school suspensions don't come from stuff like that. They come from what he calls disciplinary moments. A moment where I have to interpret your behavior and make a subjective decision about what your behavior means. The problem is, white teacher or black teacher, white cop or black cop, same principle. I already have scripts in my mind of who black people are, of who black men are. So when you stand up, I think I have to decide whether you're being aggressive. I have to decide whether or not you're being attentive. I have to decide whether or not you're being respectful. I have to make a decision based on my interpretation, which is always viewed through the lens of how I see black people and how I see black girls and how I see white boys, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so unfortunately, until we can get rid of that, we can't redress the fundamental issue.
I come at this from a little bit different point, though. I think if you have an A education and you send your students home to an F community, you have failed, right? I go into the schools in the cities that we recruit the students, and I walk their neighborhoods, and I sit in their high schools. I know what they look like. I know the dysfunctionality that they are dealing with. I know their parents. I understand. Because I don't understand how I ask you to come to my school, but I don't have the respect to go to your community. Teach our students is your communities are not places to run from. Your communities are places for you to bring your gifts back to develop and build so that that cycle of poverty and depravity ends, right? Our institutional ethos is we over me. The needs of the community supersede the wants of the individual. You have a responsibility to leave places better than you found them. Now, you can't do that if you haven't cultivated your mind. You can't do that if you haven't nurtured your spirit. You can't do that if you haven't taken your talents and developed them. But then once you do that, address the issues of economic struggle. Address the issues of homelessness. Address the issues of drug abuse. And how about we deal with these things? Because we can't lift any of us if we aren't lifting all of us. And that's our philosophy, and that's my philosophy on education.
I think young people, again, because of their enthusiasm, because of their energy, because of the situations that they're in related to education, that they're constantly in a process of learning, that they're using that education and educating themselves, right? The work of the Dream Defenders and others, Power U, they have these teach-ins where they are re-educating one another, right? They're building meaningful relationships. And so I think that young people, again, have always been a part of this conversation. They will continue to be a part of this conversation. And us, and I guess now I'm officially older, as I heard someone talking about me being an older person, that we need to listen and learn as well. How do we continue to improve upon our practice by saying, what is it that we need to do for you, given our positions of privilege and power? How can we support you? How can we connect you to resources? What is it that we can make sure in our positions that we can change by listening to what it is that you have to say?
In the beginning of every child, education is the foundation. If we miss that, we miss everything for that child. Early on, we need to help them have a strong foundation, which means is to educate them and guide them and partner with them. Let me tell you, even at the young age, a child can be directed into what the child is interested in. Some children can be smart with their hands, some can be smart with their brain, some with their feet. You have to identify the gift of that single individual and guide them through that. And I want to say also about early childhood education, we need to partner. We as parents, we have to find out what role are we doing. Are we coming home tired and saying to our child, oh yes, open the book and look, okay, that's what you did today, all right, fine. We need to check our own conduct and our own behavior towards our children. Let's not do something for them. Let's do something with them. We can honor the past, live in the present, and change the future with education.
So what's resonated amongst the conversations we've had today is the fact that there's no connection. So 82% of teachers in the classroom are white. We are now in a minority to majority system. That has to change. You can't make the connection, or it's difficult to make the connection when you don't have representation. The audacity to dream, to be a cook, whatever you want to be, has to be nurtured first at home and also potentially in the classroom. So I think one of the things that we need to address in the K-12 system is to get better representation of people of color in the classroom. So I think representation in the classroom is really important. She also mentioned around compensation. Educators have the lowest paying jobs for people who went through four-year college. And just so you know, when you finish 4 years of college, your education don't stop. You're talking about continuous improvement. That, educators have a daunting task when they enter the classroom, 30, 35 teachers. So I think we have to invest. So the average teacher in America make $30,000 starting off, first couple of years. That's basically at the poverty level, right? You get a job, $15 an hour, you're getting close to $30,000. We have to change that trajectory because you can't entice young African Americans to go in the classroom unless they think economically there's going to be some reward to them to a certain extent. So I think there's a couple of issues that I would like to highlight around the K-12 system: recruitment, retention of teachers, training, and also representation and also compensation. In my opinion, when you get representation in the classroom, you can change content. Right now, the content isn't geared towards our children being successful. You can't change content if parents aren't involved, understanding what's going on in the classroom. You don't have representation. How is it going to happen? So in certain respects, the system does have to change greatly.
There's a structural flaw. There's a structural flaw. We have to address the structural flaw. The state education boards in all of our states approve what our students are being taught. But we don't engage with the state education boards. We're not voting, we're not paying attention. And then when our students come home, we're not looking at what they're learning. So then we're surprised when the material is inconsistent with what we know to be true. If we really want to fix K through 12, we have to accept that it's going to require all of us to engage. Okay, all of us to engage. And that means even if you don't have children in the schools, you still are a taxpayer. you still have an obligation and opportunity to voice your concerns. So we have to create a school experience that is consistent with the times that we are currently in.
We have to be organized, we have to be committed, we have to work with one another, and we have to build structures that are responsive to the needs of the community. Because you're right, if you have parent-teacher night at 5 o'clock in a poor neighborhood, most people still at work. That's a middle-class idea that you get off work at 5 o'clock. Who get off work at 5 o'clock, right? In the hood, don't nobody get off work at 5 o'clock. You get up at 11 o'clock if you're lucky, right? Right. So how do we engage parents? And if you went to schools that were broken, coming back to school is like returning to a scene of a crime. So you don't intuitively and emotionally have a relationship, a warm and fuzzy relationship to school the way other people do. So we have to reshape that relationship. I do believe, because we built this thing, that it is ours. And so I believe that the public good must be sustained. That don't mean I don't want us to have our own stuff, but I don't want us to walk away from the thing that we built. I think we need to dismantle what has been built, reshape the system, and build something that is in our image and our likeness. That's what I think we need to do. And I think that's a slightly, we're on the same page in terms of getting our own stuff, but I think in terms of policy and in terms of structure, it's much easier to say we are going to have site-based selection in schools so that we pick the principal in our neighborhood. We're going to pick the teachers in our neighborhood. We're going to not rely on a national model of curriculum so that we can get Molefi Asante's book on African history as opposed to John Hershkowitz or John Smith, because y'all gonna go somewhere else with that. How can we have, so those are still nationalist ideals, but they're nationalist ideals that fit within a framework that we can manage and that we can actually do something actionable. And I think if we can begin to think like that, we might get somewhere.
Look, you know, I obviously am a college president, so I'm dealing with this on a different level, but I think that we have to look at education from the standpoint of making it relevant to the communities that it serves, right? We believe in experiential learning. We believe that we can teach any student anything by incorporating their community and their personal experiences into the lesson plans, right? So in 10 years, I think we can see improved test scores. I think we can see improved performance. I think we can see improved outcomes if we start to actually acknowledge what is going on in the communities that are producing these students and teaching them the power of addressing their own issues.
In 10 years, I want to tell a story of victory. You know, I come out of a tradition of hope against all evidence to the contrary. We keep fighting, we keep building, we keep winning. And I want to see in 10 years that we have made a substantive change in the world. And I believe we will, because we always have.
Is although we've been thinking about race being in the forefront, that our story is one that's intersectional, right? And what I mean by that is that although we will be telling our own stories as Black folks, and we will be telling them from positions that recognize the humanity of women, that it recognizes the humanity of members of our LGBTQ community, it recognizes the people that are differently abled, people that are from different religions, that it's a story that actually acknowledges all Black lives, right? If we're talking about this movement for Black lives and that Black lives matter, that all of our lives matter in a very intricate and meaningful way, and that those stories can all be told in a collective unison voice and concert.
10 years from now, I would like to see many young African-American lawyers, teachers, and doctors. Why not activists? I believe in the youth today. I believe that we will do that with partnering with them, talking with them, and guiding them through the right path.
Our children need to have the basics K to 12, but they need to have a climate where they decide where they're going. If we get in a car right now, the first thing you got to decide is where we going. The reason we're lost is because we have no destination in life. You go to the airport, first, you can't buy a ticket, you can't go through security till you first decide where you're going. And education ought to drive you to where you're going. We've got to change where we have our young people, K to 12, think about life, see where they're going, and then use education as the tool to get there. Our job is to take the power back, to give them the tools to achieve a goal.